The silence before the storm was the loudest thing Lien Carter had ever heard. The town square, once a bustling hub of activity, now stood eerily empty, its cobblestones cracked and scorched from the invaders' previous assaults. Above, the oppressive sky bore the faint shimmer of an alien armada, their ships hovering like a thundercloud, ready to unleash hell. Lien adjusted the strap of his makeshift armor, his breathing steady but shallow. The invaders had declared Earth's surrender a week ago, their ultimatum delivered with cold efficiency. Resistance, they claimed, was futile. They had leveled cities, dismantled militaries, and left humanity scrambling in the ashes of its former glory. And yet, here he was, standing alone in the center of a town abandoned by hope. The rumble of the alien army's approach sent vibrations through the ground, each step of their mechanized troops a reminder of the unstoppable force closing in. Lien clenched his fists, his heart hammering against his ribs. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a leader. He was just a man who had seen too much loss to stay silent. As the first ranks of the alien vanguard came into view, their sleek exosuits glinting in the dim light, Lien stepped forward. His voice, hoarse but unwavering, echoed through the empty square. "I'm here to speak to your commander," he called out. The aliens halted, their movements unervingly synchronized. A figure emerged from their ranks, its towering frame encased in ornate armor that glowed faintly with an otherworldly energy. This was Commander Thrask, the architect of Earth's subjugation, his reputation as a ruthless conqueror preceding him. Thrask regarded Lien with an expression that could almost be mistaken for amusement. "You are bold, human," he said, his voice resonating with a metallic edge. "But boldness without power is meaningless. What do you hope to achieve by standing alone against my army?" Lien took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here to remind you of something your kind seems to have forgotten." Thrask tilted his head, his glowing eyes narrowing. "And what is that?" Lien's voice hardened. "That humans don't break as easily as you think. You've crushed our cities, but not our spirit. You've silenced our leaders, but not our resolve. And no matter how many of us you kill, there will always be someone willing to stand in your way." The square fell silent, the weight of Lien's words hanging in the air. Thrask's expression darkened, his armored fingers twitching as if resisting the urge to strike him down. "You presume to lecture me on resilience?" he said, his tone cold. "You are but an insect, clinging to a rock that I could shatter with a single command." Lien stepped closer, his defiance unwavering. "Maybe I am," he said, "but even an insect can make a giant bleed." The tension in the air was electric, every soldier in the alien ranks frozen as they awaited Thrask's response. Lien braced himself, his pulse racing, as the alien commander took a step forward. But instead of striking him down, Thrask spoke, his voice quieter but no less dangerous. "Very well, human," he said. "You wish to stand against my army? Then let your actions speak louder than your words. Show me the courage you so proudly claim to possess." The challenge was clear, the stakes impossibly high. But as Lien stared into the glowing eyes of his enemy, he felt a surge of determination unlike anything he had ever known. This was his moment. This was the line he refused to let them cross. And so, with the eyes of an entire army upon him, Lien Carter stood his ground, ready to prove that, even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's courage burned brighter than any weapon. The confrontation in the square became the spark that set the world alight. Lien's stand against the alien army was broadcast through hidden channels, captured by the few brave souls who had refused to flee. Footage of the lone man defying an empire spread like wildfire, reaching the remnants of humanity hiding in bunkers, forests, and the ruins of their cities. In one such bunker, deep beneath the surface of what was once New York City, a group of resistance fighters gathered around a flickering screen. Among them was Tessa Blake, a former journalist turned freedom fighter. She watched the broadcast with wide eyes, her heart pounding as Lien's voice echoed through the small room. "He's insane," one of the fighters muttered, shaking his head. "Standing there like that, unarmed against Thrask? He's as good as dead." Tessa disagreed. "He's not insane," she said, her voice firm. "He's doing what none of us had the courage to do. He's showing the world that we're still here, that we still have a choice." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the group. For months, the resistance had been fractured, its members scattered and demoralized. But now, watching Lien face the alien commander without fear, something stirred within them, a spark of hope. Meanwhile, in the square, the standoff between Lien and Thrask continued. The alien commander's armored form towered over Lien, his glowing eyes unblinking. Around them, the alien soldiers stood motionless, their weapons trained on the lone human but awaiting their leader's command. "You've made your stand, human," Thrask said, his voice reverberating through the square. square. But words are fleeting. Show me this courage you claim to possess. Lien's jaw tightened. He knew he was outmatched. The alien technology was leagues beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. But he also knew that courage wasn't about having the upper hand. It was about standing firm when every instinct told you to run. You want courage? Lien said, his voice steady. Then watch what happens when you try to take the last shred of humanity from us. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, its surface covered in hastily soldered circuits and wires. It was a prototype, one of the Resistance's last-ditch efforts to level the playing field, a pulse generator designed to disrupt the aliens' advanced technology. Thrask's eyes narrowed as Lien held the device aloft. You think that toy will save you? He sneered. Your defiance is admirable, but it changes nothing. Lien pressed the button. The pulse exploded outward, an invisible wave that rippled through the square. Alien soldiers staggered, their exosuits sparking as their systems temporarily shut down. Thrask himself took a step back, his armor flickering with disrupted energy. The humans watching from the shadows gasped, their disbelief giving way to exhilaration. For the first time, the invincible Zevran army looked vulnerable, but the victory was short-lived. Thrask recovered quickly, his armor reactivating with a low hum. He stepped forward, his expression dark. Impressive, he said, his tone laced with menace. But a single spark cannot stop a storm. Lien braced himself as Thrask raised his hand, a burst of energy forming in his palm. The alien commander's attack would be lethal, and Lien knew it. But he refused to move. If this was where his stand ended, so be it. He had shown the world that resistance was possible, and that was enough. But before Thrask could strike, a sudden explosion rocked the square. A group of resistance fighters, led by Tessa, had arrived in a stolen alien transport. They opened fire on the alien ranks, their salvaged weapons blazing. The soldiers scrambled to respond, their ranks thrown into chaos. Lien stared in shock as the resistance fighters joined the fray, their courage reigniting his own. Tessa jumped from the transport, her weapons slung over her shoulder as she ran to his side. You didn't think we'd let you have all the glory, did you? She said, a grin breaking through the intensity of the moment. Lien chuckled despite himself. I thought I was the crazy one. You still are, Tessa replied. But it looks like it's contagious. The battle raged on, the resistance fighters using every trick and tactic they had learned in months of guerrilla warfare. The aliens, though formidable, were caught off guard by the ferocity and ingenuity of their human opponents. For the first time, the Zevran army was forced to retreat. As the alien forces withdrew, Thrask lingered, his gaze locked on Lien. This is not the end, human, he said, his voice cold. You have won a battle, but the war is far from over. Lien met his gaze, his expression unyielding. Then we'll fight you every step of the way, he said, because that's what humans do. We fight. Thrask said nothing more, his form dissolving into a beam of light as he teleported to his ship. The square fell silent once more, the aftermath of the battle leaving it scarred but still standing. Lien turned to the resistance fighters, his heart swelling with gratitude and resolve. You didn't have to come, he said to Tessa. She shrugged, a spark of determination in her eyes. You showed us it was possible, she said. Now it's our turn to show them what we're made of. In the days that followed, the story of Lien's stand and the Resistance's victory spread across the globe. It became a rallying cry, a beacon of hope for those who had thought all was lost. The fractured resistance began to unite, their resolve stronger than ever. But the fight was far from over. The Zevran were relentless, their power unmatched. And yet, for the first time, humanity believed they had a chance. Because one man had stood against an army. And in doing so, he had reminded the world of a truth that no conqueror could ever erase. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the strength to face it, no matter the odds. The Resistance's victory in the square marked a turning point in the war. Across the globe, pockets of humanity began to rise, inspired by the defiance they had witnessed. People who had once believed they were powerless found strength in Lien's stand, their courage reignited by the spark he had lit. In a hidden bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Lien and Tessa worked tirelessly to coordinate the growing resistance. The bunker, once a forgotten Cold War relic, had become the nerve center of humanity's fight for survival. Maps and monitors covered the walls, tracking the movements of both the resistance and the Zevran forces. Lien, Tessa said one evening, her voice cutting through the hum of activity. We need to talk. He looked up from the makeshift console, his expression weary but attentive. What's on your mind? Tessa hesitated, her gaze flicking to the others in the room. She gestured for him to follow her into the adjoining chamber, a small, dimly lit space that served as a private meeting room. Once they were alone, she crossed her arms, her expression serious. We've done the impossible, she began. We've united people who thought they had nothing left to fight for. But the Zevran aren't going to let this stand. Thrask isn't the kind of leader who takes defeat lightly. He'll come for us, and when he does, we need to be ready. Lien nodded, his jaw tightening. I know. That's why we're building alliances, gathering resources, and training every person willing to fight. It's not enough, Tessa said, her tone firm. We need more than just numbers. We need a plan that hits them where it hurts. Something that shows them we're not just fighting to survive. We're fighting to win. Lien studied her for a moment, his mind racing. You have something in mind, don't you? She nodded. The Zevran rely on their command network to coordinate their forces. It's how they stay one step ahead of us. If we can disrupt that network, cut off their ability to communicate and strategize, we could turn the tide in our favor. And how do we do that? Lien asked, his skepticism evident. Tessa leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We hit their central hub. It's a heavily fortified facility in orbit, but we've got intel on its layout. If we can infiltrate it and plant a high-yield EMP device, we could cripple their operations across the planet. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. But as Lien listened, he couldn't deny the logic behind it. The Zevran's greatest strength was their coordination, and if the resistance could rob them of that advantage, it could change everything. Who do we send? Lien asked, his voice low. Tessa met his gaze, her expression resolute. We send the best we've got, and if that means us, so be it. The days that followed were a blur of preparation. The resistance pooled their resources, crafting the EMP device and training for the infiltration mission. Lien and Tessa led the effort, their determination inspiring those around them. When the day of the mission arrived, the tension in the bunker was palpable. Lien stood before the assembled fighters, his voice steady as he addressed them. What we're about to do is dangerous, he said, but it's also necessary. The Zevran have underestimated us for too long. They think we're broken, that we're weak. Today, we prove them wrong. The room erupted in cheers, the sound a testament to the unshakable resolve of the resistance. The mission itself was a harrowing ordeal. Lien, Tessa, and a small team of elite fighters boarded a stolen Zevran transport, their every move calculated to avoid detection. As they approached the orbital facility, the weight of their task pressed down on them. Inside the facility, the team moved with precision, their training and preparation paying off. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors, evading patrols and disabling security systems. When they reached the central command chamber, the sight before them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a massive array of alien technology pulsing with energy. This is it, Tessa said, her voice barely audible over the hum of machinery. Let's make it count. Lien placed the EMP device at the heart of the chamber, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. The team worked quickly, their every action a race against time. But as they prepared to activate the device, an alarm blared, the facility's defenses springing to life. Zevran soldiers poured into the chamber, their weapons blazing. The resistance fighters fought with everything they had, their determination driving them forward even as the odds stacked against them. Lien and Tessa held the line, their movements a seamless dance of survival and defiance. In the end, it was Tessa who made the ultimate sacrifice. As the Zevran forces closed in, she stayed behind to cover the team's retreat, her final act ensuring the success of the mission. Lien barely made it back to the transport, his heart heavy with grief. But as the EMP device detonated, sending a shockwave through the Zevran network, he knew her sacrifice hadn't been in vain. The aftermath of the mission was a turning point in the war. The Zevran's operations were thrown into chaos, their forces fractured and disoriented. The resistance seized the opportunity, launching coordinated strikes that reclaimed key territories. Lien's grief over Tessa's loss was a constant companion, but he channeled it into his leadership, his resolve unshakable. He became the face of the resistance, his actions inspiring countless others to rise. And though the war was far from over, one thing was clear, the tide had turned. Humanity, once on the brink of annihilation, had found its courage, and it was that courage that would carry them to victory. The Zevran response to the orbital facility's destruction was as brutal as it was expected. With their communication network crippled, the once coordinated alien forces resorted to chaotic and indiscriminate retaliation. Cities burned, and innocents suffered as the invaders lashed out in desperation. But amidst the devastation, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. Lien's leadership took on a mythic quality. Stories of his defiance spread far and wide, painting him as a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit. Resistance cells that had once operated in isolation now coordinated their efforts, using the fractured Zevran network to their advantage. The fight for Earth transformed from a desperate struggle to a calculated campaign. But the cost of the war weighed heavily on Lien. Each victory brought with it a toll, friends lost, lost, lives shattered, and the haunting memory of Tessa's sacrifice. He spent long nights alone, his mind replaying the moment she had stayed behind, her voice echoing in his thoughts. Make it count. One evening, as Lien stood on a ridge overlooking a reclaimed city, a young resistance fighter approached him. The boy couldn't have been more than 16, his uniform ill-fitting and his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and determination. "Commander Carter," the boy said, his voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted to say thank you for giving us hope." Lien turned to him, his expression softening. "What's your name?" he asked. "David," the boy replied. "David Connor." Lien placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, his gaze steady. "David, hope isn't something I gave you. It's something you found within yourself. Never forget that." The exchange stayed with Lien as the resistance prepared for their next move, a daring assault on the Zevran flagship orbiting Earth. Intelligence indicated that Commander Thrask himself was aboard, overseeing the invasion personally. Taking the flagship would be more than just a tactical victory. It would be a blow to the Zevrans' morale and a symbol of humanity's resilience. The plan was ambitious, involving a multi-pronged attack that combined ground forces, air support, and a small strike team tasked with infiltrating the flagship. Lien insisted on leading the strike team himself, despite protests from his advisors. "This isn't just about strategy," he said during the briefing. "It's about showing the world that we're willing to fight for our future, no matter the cost. If I'm asking others to risk their lives, I won't do it from the safety of a command center." The mission began under the cover of darkness, the resistance fighters moving with practiced precision. The strike team boarded a captured Zevran transport, their hearts pounding as they approached the massive alien vessel. The flagship loomed before them, its surface bristling with weaponry and glowing with an ominous energy. Inside the ship, the strike team moved quickly, their movements silent but purposeful. They encountered resistance at every turn, the corridors echoing with the sounds of battle. Lien led the charge, his determination driving him forward even as exhaustion threatened to overtake him. When they finally reached the command center, they found Thrask waiting for them. The alien commander stood at the center of the room, his imposing form framed by the glow of holographic displays. He regarded Lien with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "You continue to surprise me, human," Thrask said, his tone almost conversational. "But your defiance is futile. This ends here." Lien stepped forward, his weapon raised. "You're right about one thing," he said. "This does end here, but not the way you think." The battle that followed was brutal and intense, the confined space amplifying every explosion and scream. Lien and Thrask clashed at the center of the chaos, their fight a microcosm of the larger conflict. Thrask's strength and advanced technology gave him the upper hand, but Lien's determination and resourcefulness leveled the playing field. In the end, it was Lien's humanity that proved decisive. Using a damaged Zevran weapon, he delivered a final blow that brought Thrask to his knees. The alien commander stared up at him, his glowing eyes flickering. "You are stronger than I expected," Thrask said, his voice weakened. "Perhaps there is more to your kind than I realized." Lien lowered his weapon, his chest heaving. "It's not just about strength," he said. "It's about what we fight for." With Thrask defeated, the resistance seized control of the flagship. The victory sent shockwaves through the Zevran ranks, their once unshakable confidence shattered. Across the planet, the invaders began to retreat, their forces crumbling under the weight of their losses. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had hope, not just for survival but for victory. As the resistance celebrated their hard-fought triumph, Lien found himself standing alone in the flagship's observation deck. The view of Earth filled the massive window, its surface scarred but still beautiful. He thought of Tessa, of David, and of the countless others who had fought and sacrificed for this moment. The war wasn't over. There were still battles to be fought, lives to be rebuilt, and wounds to be healed. But for the first time, Lien believed that a future worth fighting for was within reach. And as he stared out at the stars, their light a reminder of the vastness of the universe, he made a silent vow to honor those who had fallen, to protect those who remained, and to ensure that humanity's courage would never be forgotten. Because courage wasn't just about standing against an enemy. It was about standing for something greater than yourself. And that was a lesson no invader could ever erase. The victory over Thrask's flagship marked the beginning of the end of the Zevran invasion. With their command structure in disarray and their forces in retreat, the aliens were forced to reconsider their approach. The resistance, emboldened by their success, launched a series of coordinated offensives that reclaimed key territories and dismantled the remnants of the invaders' occupation. But the path to freedom was far from easy. For every victory, there were losses. Cities lay in ruins, families were torn apart, and the scars of the war ran deep. Lien knew that winning the war was only the first step. The real challenge would be rebuilding, rebuilding, healing a world that had been pushed to the brink. In the weeks following the flagship's capture, a council of resistance leaders gathered to discuss the future. Representatives from every major region attended, their voices carrying the hopes and fears of their people. Lien, now seen as a unifying figure, was asked to address the assembly. Standing before the gathered leaders, he felt the weight of their expectations. But he also felt the strength of the collective will that had brought them to this moment. "We stand here today because we refuse to give up," he began, his voice steady, "because we chose to fight for a world worth living in. But our fight isn't over. The Zevran may be retreating, but they're not gone. And even when they are, our work will continue." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "We must rebuild, not just our cities, but our trust in one another. We must learn from this war and ensure that we never face such devastation again. Together, we can create a future where courage isn't just about standing against an enemy, but about standing with each other." The room erupted into applause, the sound a testament to the unity that had emerged from the chaos of war. As the weeks turned into months, the remnants of the Zevran forces withdrew entirely, their defeat a humbling reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Earth began the slow process of rebuilding, its people working side by side to restore what had been lost. Lien continued to lead, his presence a source of inspiration for those around him. But he never saw himself as a hero. To him, the true heroes were the countless individuals who had fought, sacrificed, and endured for the sake of a better future. One day, as he walked through a rebuilt town square, he came across a group of children playing near a new monument. The statue depicted a figure standing tall and defiant, a tribute to humanity's courage. At its base was an inscription that read, "To those who stood when others fell, to those who believed when others doubted, to those who proved that courage has no limit." A young girl approached him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Are you the man in the statue?" she asked. Lien smiled, kneeling to her level. "The man in the statue isn't just me," he said. "It's all of us. It's everyone who fought for what they believed in." The girl tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked. Lien's smile faded slightly, his gaze distant. "Maybe," he said, "but if they do, we'll be ready. Because now they know something they didn't before." "What's that?" the girl asked. "That humans don't give up," he said. "And that courage isn't something you can conquer." As the years passed, Earth's recovery became a symbol of resilience and hope. The lessons of the war were etched into the fabric of society, a reminder of what humanity could achieve when united. And though the scars of the conflict remained, they served as a testament to the strength of those who had endured. In the quiet moments, Lien often found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of Tessa, of David, and of the countless others who had stood alongside him. Their courage, their sacrifices, and their unwavering belief in a better world were the foundation of everything they had built. One evening, as he stood beneath a sky filled with stars, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The war was over, but the fight for a better future continued, and he was ready to face whatever came next. Because courage wasn't just about standing against an enemy, it was about standing for something greater than yourself. And that, he knew, was a lesson worth passing on to the generations that would follow. The victory over the Zevran not only reshaped Earth, but also sent ripples across the galaxy. Reports of humanity's resilience and courage reached distant systems, some of which had lived under the shadow of Zevran domination for centuries. The message was clear: even the most advanced conquerors could be defied by the unyielding will of those who refused to surrender. On a distant planet, an alien scholar named Orav watched the broadcasts of Earth's resistance with fascination. The Zevran Empire, once considered an unstoppable force, had been humbled by a species they deemed primitive. To Orav, it was a revelation, an opportunity to document the unique traits that had allowed humanity to prevail. Orav traveled to Earth, seeking an audience with Lien Carter. When they met, Orav was struck by the quiet strength in Lien's demeanor. This was not the brash, impulsive leader the scholar had expected, but a man tempered by loss and driven by purpose. "Commander Carter," Orav said, bowing slightly, "your people's triumph is unlike anything I have ever studied. What is it that makes humanity so indomitable?" Lien considered the question, his gaze distant. "It's not one thing," he said. "It's the way we come together when it matters most. It's our ability to find hope in the darkest places, to adapt, to fight for each other even when the odds are against us." Orav nodded, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "And yet, the cost of such resilience is immense. Do you believe it was worth it?" Lien's expression softened, the weight of his experiences evident. Every life lost, every sacrifice made, it all led to this moment, to a chance for us to rebuild, to be better. "So yes, I believe it was worth it," But that doesn't mean it was easy. The scholars' visit became the first of many diplomatic exchanges between Earth and other species. As humanity rebuilt, it also began to reach out, forming alliances and sharing knowledge with worlds that had once seemed impossibly distant. The unity forged in the fires of war became a foundation for a new era of cooperation and exploration. Back on Earth, the process of rebuilding continued. Entire cities were reconstructed, their designs blending human ingenuity with insights gained from the study of alien technology. Schools and libraries reopened, their halls filled with the laughter and curiosity of a generation determined to learn from the past. Among the initiatives launched during this time was the creation of the Unity Monument, a sprawling structure that served as both a memorial and a beacon of hope. Its central spire reached toward the heavens, its base adorned with plaques honoring those who had fought and fallen. One inscription read, "In courage we found our strength. In unity we found our future." Lien often visited the monument, finding solace in its quiet beauty. On one such visit, he encountered David Connor, now an adult and a rising leader within the new Global Council. "You've come a long way," Lien said, his voice filled with pride. David smiled, his gaze fixed on the spire. "Only because we had someone to show us the way," he replied. "You've been our North Star, Lien, a reminder of what we can achieve when we refuse to give up." Lien shook his head, his expression humble. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "It was all of us standing together. And now it's your turn to carry that torch." As the years passed, humanity's story became a source of inspiration for countless civilizations. The phrase Earth's courage entered the lexicon of the galaxy, a testament to the power of resilience and unity. Lien's name, along with those of Tessa and others who had stood against the Zevran, became synonymous with hope. In his later years, Lien retired to a quiet corner of the world, where he tended a small garden and wrote his memoirs. The garden, like the world it inhabited, was a blend of old and new, Earth's flora interwoven with plants gifted by alien allies. It was a living symbol of the unity he had fought so hard to achieve. One evening, as he watched the sun set over the horizon, Lien felt a deep sense of peace. The battles were over, but their lessons endured. Humanity had proven its worth not just through its defiance, but through its ability to build, to heal, and to dream of a better tomorrow. And as the stars began to appear, their light shimmering in the twilight, Lien Carter smiled. He knew that the legacy of Earth's courage would shine as brightly as the stars themselves, a beacon for all who dared to stand for what was right, no matter the cost. As Earth rebuilt and alliances flourished, the galaxy began to see humanity not as a fragile species, but as a force of adaptation and resilience. The Unity Monument became a symbol of hope, visited by dignitaries and travelers from across the stars. It stood as a testament to what could be achieved when courage met unity. The formation of the Interstellar Concord followed soon after, a coalition of planets dedicated to peace, mutual respect, and the pursuit of knowledge. Earth was granted a seat on its governing council, a recognition of the role it had played in challenging the Zevran Empire. Lien, though reluctant, was named Earth's first ambassador, his experiences and wisdom making him the ideal choice. The Concord's inaugural session was held aboard the Stellar Nexus, a massive space station orbiting a distant star. Lien stood among representatives of countless species, his heart heavy with the weight of his responsibility. But as he gazed around the chamber, he was struck by the diversity of those gathered, a tapestry of life united by a shared commitment to a better future. When it was his turn to speak, Lien stepped forward, his voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. "We stand here today as survivors," he began. "Each of us has faced trials that tested our resolve, that challenged us to question who we are and what we stand for. But we are more than survivors. We are builders. We are dreamers. And together, we have the power to shape a future defined not by fear, but by hope." His words resonated deeply, the chamber erupting into applause. For Lien, it was a moment of validation, a reminder that even the smallest acts of courage could ripple outward, touching lives in ways he could never have imagined. Back on Earth, the younger generation embraced the opportunities that the new era presented. Cultural exchanges flourished, with students, artists, and scientists traveling between worlds, sharing their knowledge and learning from one another. Humanity's creativity and adaptability became one of its most valued traits, inspiring innovations that transformed life across the galaxy. Among these exchanges was a program initiated by David Connor, now a prominent leader within the Concord. The program, called the Starbound Initiative, brought young people from Earth and other planets together to work on collaborative projects. One such project was the construction of a vast interstellar library, its archives accessible to anyone, anywhere. The library's central hall featured a mural depicting the history of the Resistance, its vibrant colors capturing the triumphs and sacrifices sacrifices that had defined Earth's struggle. At its heart was an image of Lien standing against the Zevran army, his figure a reminder of the courage that had sparked a revolution. In his later years, Lien often visited the library, his presence a quiet acknowledgement of the legacy he had helped to create. He would sit among the students and travelers, listening to their stories and marveling at the interconnectedness of their lives. One day, as he walked through the library's gardens, he encountered a young alien artist sketching the monument spire. The artist looked up, his eyes widening in recognition. "You're him, aren't you?" the artist said, his voice filled with awe. "The man who stood against the army?" Lien smiled, his gaze thoughtful. "I'm just a man," he said, "but what we did together. It was never just about one person. It was about all of us, finding the courage to stand for what we believe in." The artist nodded, his expression contemplative. "It's a story I'll never forget," he said. "Thank you for giving us something to believe in." As Lien walked away, he felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond words. The galaxy was changing, its people reaching for something greater than themselves. And though his role in that change was drawing to a close, he knew that the seeds he had sown would continue to grow. In the end, the story of Earth's courage became a cornerstone of galactic history, its lessons taught in classrooms and its message carried by those who dared to dream. And as the stars shone brightly across the vast expanse of space, they whispered a truth that transcended time. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to stand, to believe, and to build a future worth fighting for. And in that courage, humanity found its place among the stars. Decades passed, and the legacy of humanity's courage continued to grow. The interstellar concord expanded to include hundreds of civilizations, its influence reaching the farthest corners of the galaxy. Earth, once seen as an insignificant world, became a hub of innovation and cultural exchange, its people contributing to the shared wealth of knowledge and creativity that defined the new era. Among the most celebrated advancements of the era was the development of the Starbridge network, a series of interconnected stations that allowed instantaneous travel between worlds. The network, a collaboration between Earth's engineers and alien scientists, symbolized the unity that had emerged from the ashes of war. At the heart of the Starbridge network was the Nexus Core, a massive station orbiting Earth. The station's design was inspired by the Unity Monument, its spires reaching toward the stars. Inside, holographic displays chronicled the history of the Resistance, their vibrant images a testament to the sacrifices that had paved the way for the future. Lien Carter, now in his twilight years, was invited to the dedication ceremony of the Nexus Core. He stood before a crowd of thousands, his once dark hair now streaked with gray. Despite his age, his presence commanded respect, his voice carrying the weight of a lifetime of experience. "When we stood against the Zevran," he began, "we weren't fighting just for survival. We were fighting for the right to dream, to hope, and to build a world that reflected the best of who we are. Today, as I look at what we've accomplished, I see those dreams made real. And I know that the future we fought for is in good hands." The crowd erupted into applause, their voices a symphony of gratitude and admiration. For Lien, it was a moment of closure, a recognition of the journey that had brought him from the broken streets of the Resistance to the heights of interstellar cooperation. As the ceremony concluded, Lien found himself reflecting on the people who had shaped his path. Tessa's sacrifice, David's growth, and the countless others who had stood beside him in the fight for freedom were never far from his thoughts. Their courage, their belief in a better future, had been the foundation of everything he had achieved. In his final years, Lien returned to his quiet home on Earth, where he spent his days tending to his garden and writing letters to the friends and allies he had made across the galaxy. His garden, a harmonious blend of Earth and alien flora, became a popular destination for visitors, its beauty a living reminder of the unity he had helped to foster. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lien sat beneath a towering tree gifted by a distant ally. The tree's leaves shimmered with a soft, golden light, their glow casting a serene warmth over the garden. He thought of the stars, of the vastness of the universe, and of the small but significant role humanity had come to play in its story. A young visitor approached him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice soft, "do you ever wish things had been different?" Lien smiled, his gaze distant. "There were moments when the weight of it all felt unbearable," he admitted. "But every choice we made, every step we took, led us here. And here is exactly where we're meant to be." The girl nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Will the stars always remember us?" she asked. Lien's smile deepened, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "The stars remember everything," he said. "And as long as we continue to dream, to hope, and to stand for what's right, our light will never fade." As the years turned to centuries, Lien's story became the stuff of legend. His name, and the names of those who had stood with him were etched into the annals of history, their courage inspiring generations to come. The galaxy, vast and ever-changing, carried their legacy forward, a testament to the power of resilience and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And as the stars stretched endlessly across the cosmos, their light whispered a timeless truth: in courage we rise, in unity we endure, and in hope we find our future.